So, welcome at a new episode of acreates, and I'm very excited to announce another indie dev interview. So this time we are going to be a bit more based on the struggles, and I think it's still a very successful product because it has been on the market, it has a niche. The developer noted that he is not so happy with the outcome, a lot of lessons learned, and I hope we also can learn a lot. For this game you should use a controller, right?
Yes.
I planned to play the game with a keyboard, but it almost made a warning message with "How dare you try to play this on your keyboard?"
Right. So I guess it has to do with core game idea and how the game idea came along. Kind of you pull the Jello, right? And then you aim where you want to jump and then you release. Initially, I came up with that idea on the controller. And to me, it's the best way to play the game because it's very tactile feel of playing the game. So you pull the stick, you feel it pulling on your finger a bit. So you feel that tension of the Jello and then you release, and the stick also kind of jumps the same way as Jello does. I did implement mouse and keyboard controls later on, of course, because I was going to release on Steam, and then it's just kind of unreasonable to expect everyone there to have a controller, but I still very much would like people to use a controller if they have one. Planning to release on Nintendo Switch soon as well. Should not be as much of a problem. Yeah, I hope more people are gonna experience it like that. However, mouse and keyboard controls actually turned out to be easier for a lot of people to play it that way, so it's also like not a bad thing. But in terms of experience, I would prefer, I guess, players to have the experience with the controller.
Was this a school project or was this a side hustle?
Jello is a long time kind of dream game of mine. I came up with the idea of the game when I was applying to my school/university in the Netherlands. The assignment that I got was just like make any game you want in C++ with the theme Jelly. You know, that's where it came from about 8 years ago or so. That was my first prototype. I kind of combined the ideas of Angry Birds with the whole kind of pulling and releasing, and also Ollie Ollie, this skateboarding game. The basic move in that game was also to like pull the stick down and release, and then you make an Ollie. As I was studying my bachelor for years, I was dreaming of making a full game from the prototype. Well, it was first my side project on the side of my internship, then it was my graduation project, then it was my side project again. I realized that this could be something more serious, so I did it like full time for about a year. So yeah, long time in development.
Well, 8 years of development, that is very interesting, and it's a long one.
I counted all the hours that I worked on the game. It would be something about like a bit more than 2 years if I would work on it full time.
So after school you went full time?
This was kind of my hobby side project. Indie development is pretty hard to pull off. Just had a job after school. I worked there for 2 years, just kept working on Jello on the side, but A, I wanted to change jobs, and B, I attended Indigo, the indie game showcase in the Netherlands. There, I got voted into top 3 games. It was not on my mind at all to kind of have it like as a serious type of thing, especially full time. But there I decided to talk to some publishers because like the system was set up to just meet publishers if you want. And I talked to them and I realized like, some of them actually seem kind of interested, and like some of them even kind of approached me initially versus the other way around. So from that point on, I started thinking like, maybe I can take this full time. Maybe I can find a publisher, release it as a like fully made game.
Do you feel it was easy to approach the publishers at this event?
I think it was kind of easy to talk to them right away because when I was talking to them, the voting didn't happen yet. So I was not yet like in the top 3 games or whatever. My game at that point was already somewhat polished and like a nice demo, basically. Definitely the talking to publishers really influenced me also because I'm not from the European Union, I'm from Russia, and I have the additional issue of I need a visa to stay in Europe, hopefully in the Netherlands. One of the publishers mentioned like, oh, you can get an entrepreneur visa. That's like an option. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll look into that.
Did you feel that because you were a foreigner that they approached you in a different way?
I don't think that influenced it at all, but the kind of end story with publishers there is even though they were kind of friendly and talkative at the start, when it kind of came down to having like a commitment and them investing in my project, in the end, I wasn't able to find a publisher, not then, and not over like a full year of like I was developing, but I was also very actively pitching my game to anyone who would listen. Yeah.
So if I hear this timeline correctly, they were first very interested, but when a deal needed to be made, it wasn't that easy anymore.
Yeah, because they were not really approaching me with specific deals, right? And it's publishers' job to just kind of look around and see what kind of opportunities are there. So of course, I think the first impression that they want to make is like good. Of course, not all the publishers are like leading you on, so to say, but I think it's in their interest also to give you a good impression, look deeper into the project. When the talks with publishers went more deep, because it's my first game. When it was just me, like later on when I was pitching, it was me and one artist and a few other freelancers. But like, we have no experience. It's kind of very hard for us to kind of guarantee that we can even finish a game. I guess it was just hard for them to commit to that kind of thing.
So if I understand this right, you needed to work on the side and keep this project as a side hustle, right?
I kind of got a budget to go full-time and work on the game for a year together with one more person, and I hired an artist. And that was kind of my goal was in that year to find a publisher so that then we can have like roughly one more year to finish the game and really polish it. That year ended and I didn't find a publisher. The game was not exactly finished to the plans that we initially had. Yeah, I was kind of like pushed to, I kind of have to look for other ways to support myself.
And now you're with Nintendo, right? So do you have a publisher that helps you with it?
No, not at all. Actually, I wouldn't think that right away, but Nintendo is like the most friendly platform that you can release on for indie developers. I sent them my demo when it was still very rough. I was like, hey, I want to, finish this game, release it on the Switch. They require you to like answer some questions about like how are you going to use the hardware, this and that. No, they just basically said, okay, you are like a registered developer now, and I could buy a development kit. It's like slightly more expensive than the Switch itself. It's about 500 euros. And then, you have the development kit, and there you're just free to kind of develop your game. And then eventually when you pass their testing, you fix all the bugs that you can just release. I have not honestly tried Xbox yet. With Sony, they're like a bit more strict on the requirement and they want you to have like a static IP. So I was like, okay, I don't want to bother with this. But also in terms of developing, for me, it's not like that hard because I'm using Unity. So obviously it's cross-platform and you just need to take care of a few things like file saving and whatnot. It just works on the Switch basically. Well, you need to optimize. There's a few caveats, this and that, but it's not that hard.
Does Nintendo offers also free advertisement, for example?
No, not at all. They don't do nothing like that. The only thing that they did, which was pretty nice, is the whole testing thing. It's basically like kind of like free QA. Don't treat them like that. Do your own QA, do your own bug fixing. Don't just submit a broken game. But they're really thorough, and like I can see that there are people there that really like test your game a lot and come up with bugs, and like they have a whole big list of things that they test and then they tell you if it's broken. So that's like the nicest thing that they do, but no advertisement, nothing like that.
Now you kind of make me curious, like how many bugs were in your game?
Well, so they have a list of all kinds of requirements. Some things in there are like kind of like, oh, these buttons on the Switch, like you need to call them a certain way. So like these are triggers, these are like shoulders, or I don't remember. Like they have like very specific name that they want to have consistent across all Nintendo titles. Some were just like kind of weird bugs in my game specifically. A lot of bugs that I received were network related because my game is not like real-time multiplayer, but it has a server with levels that you can upload and leaderboards and stuff like that. So they were very stringent on like, oh, if you like launch your game in airplane mode, but you switch out of airplane mode, it needs to connect. But then if you switch it on and off again, then it like bugs out and all these kind of things. But yeah, I don't know. In total, I had something around like 50 issues that I had to solve. Some bigger, some smaller.
And what kind of percentage do they take?
30, like pretty standard for all platforms nowadays, except for Epic Games.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so you're not really full-time anymore, right?
No. I really the whole process of making this game was very stressful and also quite a lot in general. And then also I kind of had an upset of like not being able to release it and finish it the way I initially thought. And then I released it because I didn't focus on marketing pretty much at all. It didn't sell nearly as much as I hoped, even on the lower side. So after that, I was kind of like really burnt out and I really stepped kind of away from the game for a while. Now it's really kind of very much on the back burner for me.
So do I hear this correctly that if you redo this thing, you would do it totally different?
100%. I think I had a way more developer-based approach to making a game where my whole goal and my whole process was focused around how can I envision the best game possible and how can I make it. I think in that way, I did everything kind of well. Like I'm still proud of the game mostly, like even though I would want more time to do more things and fix some things, but now I would take a way more business-based approach. So my goal would be how can I sell the game to most people possible, and from there on I would choose how and what kind of game would I develop. I would not have as big of a scope as I had, for sure. I would try to have a game that I can like develop and release in like half a year, because you can really like learn on your mistakes and see like, oh, how did this release? How can I release it better? Then maybe publishers are also more open to you because you have released the game before. I would focus way more on marketing and develop like marketing first. So see what kind of like juicy gifts do I want so that I can post them online, and then how do I make a game that can produce those juicy gifts. I'm thinking now that making games is way less about making games than selling games, and kind of the whole process about making games. Also finding a nice team and like people to share the load. And nothing against like the artist that I worked with. He was great in terms of art, but like business side. So I need someone who can kind of have that perspective and that approach as well. So yeah, I would do kind of a lot of things differently if I would release another game, for sure.
So do you think you would have made a total different game if all these things would apply?
I think like the core concept is cool, that's still nice, but for example, I spent a lot of time in making a level editor, and that whole thing where like it's like a procedural level editor where it's grid based, but it automatically adjusts so that kind of everything flows nicely and there's a lot of decoration and stuff. So I would definitely not put in a lot of effort into that with the initial release of the game, because now it just feels like, yeah, I spend so much time on it, but no one plays the game in the first place. So why even have that there? A lot of things about more like scope and direction of where to take the core concept I would probably do.
So what is the hook of your game?
kind of interesting. So the core controls of the game, right? I feel like it's the hook, like the whole idea that I explained with like pulling and releasing the Jello. So it's not something that you see in a lot of games. There are a few games that do this kind of thing, but the kind of physics-based thing that I did with it is not something that you see. But I feel like that hook of my game only really hooks people in when they play the game. So if I'm doing like a playtest with a bunch of people, of course, like not everyone loves the game, but there's a certain good percentage of people that come and then they try the move and they go like, that is cool, that is interesting. But that hook also maybe comes in a little bit too late of what I would like, because it's not immediately visible like from the side type of thing. It doesn't like catch your eye, but if you play it, it's a hook. And that way I think the concept is cool. I don't know, maybe I would be able to find a more hooky concept if I would approach the development some other way. I think I want to really set a date like a month ahead of time, and then have a month or so of heavy marketing rather than doing kind of the slow roll type of thing at this point. So, yeah.
Do you feel that costed so much more energy, or did you felt that you didn't have the right skills yet to do the marketing well?
I think it's both. Well, for once, the marketing that I'm gonna do is not gonna be just marketing myself how I tried before. Like some people really find a really good approach with that kind of like marketing approach. You just kind of release things on Reddit or whatever, wherever else. And then as you develop the game, you have these cool moments that you can share. But it worked way too occasionally for me. And also I'm not good enough kind of at marketing, I think. So yeah, I would not just do that approach as much. I would try to do it through kind of other channels like existing game journalists, streamers, that kind of thing. And I feel like with that, it would be way smarter to do like a concentrated push kind of approach, like before the release / around the time of the release.
So social media is not really your thing, if I hear this correctly.
Yeah, I don't have that good of a feel for it. And it's also, you kind of really need to find that viral moment to share. I'm not exactly sure at this point how much of these moments my game has. Also, I have not developed exactly around that, but it worked like a few times, like with the initial controls and the physics of the character. I had a post on Reddit that did like really well. Some of my friends just saw it in their r/all and they were like, hey, oh, this is you. I'm like, oh damn, oh, this is cool. But that was like really very occasional, and I can't just keep posting the same thing like, hey, look at my controls again. And I don't have a lot more of those moments that I can share. And yeah, at some point TikTok worked like decent enough, but also it's a job in its own, and you need to spend a lot of time making all those videos and posting all of them.
So if I hear this correctly, you think that it's more about the marketing than making the game itself?
Yes, 100%, yes.
After this whole process, is it that you still want to make games, or are you like totally out of it?
No, I'm somewhere in between. I just want to like, okay, this was like too much. I just want like a job. Just tell me what to do. I'll do it. And I'm a little bit in that mode still. I would consider kind of doing indie projects again, but I doubt I would spearhead that project, so to say. Like I would want to do it with a nice team and be a part of a team to kind of spread both like the responsibility but also everything else about that whole process. So I would probably not do what I did before, which is kind of almost single-handedly trying to release a game. That's too much.
Yeah, it's one of those advices that people say, please don't do that.
Yes.
May I ask, what job are you doing now?
I'm like an all-round game developer, but I specialize in programming, and now I'm just doing freelance programming projects, also game dev related.
So you live now in the Netherlands, right?
Yes.
So is it hard to be a freelancer in the Netherlands with a foreign passport?
I think for freelance, it doesn't make that much of a difference, because for people that hire you, they don't care. It doesn't make a difference for them. It is harder to find a full-time job with a foreign passport, and specifically it means not EU passport, because for that they need to do a lot more to hire you. Basically, they need to go through a whole process with the government to apply for a work visa for you, and they need to pay extra money for that work visa and this and that. So yeah, they really would need to really want you, and you specifically, to get kind of full-time hired. It's different for different industries. So I have people who are just like programmers, but not for game devs, that work for like big companies, and basically the bigger a company is, the easier it is to do for them, because they already have that kind of process set up. It's bigger, so that kind of paying money for your visa is not that big of a deal for them. But in game dev, it's kind of, I feel like, much harder.
And for freelancing, do you use a website like Fiverr to help you out, or do you have different techniques?
No, for me, it's way more reach out and based on your network. Yeah, and kind of establishing those connections. But I don't know how other people can do it other ways. But also, like, to be fair, I have not had a ton of projects done already. So I'm not like a seasoned freelancer. So I'm not sure if I can give a lot of advice for that. But as far as other people I know, it's way nicer to have like a few established connections with different companies that can hire you on a more kind of long-term basis, even if you do freelance, which is, you know, not full-time. But that's also for programming. So I don't know how it's different maybe for artists, when people just want specific asset or a series of assets and then you're kind of done. But for programming, it's kind of way nicer to have that connection and do more long-term, because you need to kind of get used to the project and the engine that people work in and that kind of stuff. Like with
you like understand your code, right? So not everyone understands it.
Exactly, yes.
You mentioned a bit that you felt that you were getting into a burnout. Can you share something about this experience?
It was like not fun in terms of like working ethics. I had it not too bad. So it's not that I was working too many hours necessarily, because I treated it very much as like kind of a 9 to 5 more or less type of thing, and try to stick to the schedule. But for me, it was way more the weight of like that whole like responsibility. Like, is it gonna work out? Even if I would not be working, I would still be thinking about it and in the back of my mind, because I wasn't able to find a publisher no matter how hard I tried. This kind of weight of failure, so to say, really was a lot on me. So that really kind of all contributed to my burnout with like basically personal indie dev specifically, because I was like, screw this, I like, this is too much, I don't want to deal with this. So yeah, that's kind of it. And then you just kind of get really like you have a feeling of like, I don't care anymore. So you just give up on it. That's kind of that was my experience. So yeah.
And how did you overcome this mental state?
Because the game was almost finished, and I was like, in a way, I gave up in a sense that I don't care how this is gonna go. I'm just want to release. So I kind of forced myself to finish off the game, round it off, and just push that release button. It's not the smartest thing to do when you release a game. It's like super important how you release it. But yeah, I was just kind of like, okay, it's finished and I'm done with it, and now I can do something else. And I'm still kind of slowly getting over that. I don't think I'm even still over that. Like, it's almost a year since that happened, and you know, I still have a bit of that feeling. I don't have like a general burnout for other kind of types of work. It's more specific to making games yourself type of thing.
So if you would do the project again, you would do it with a team, if I hear this correctly?
Yeah, I would do it with a team. I would approach developing a very different way. There's a really nice video that I saw recently by Jonas Tyroller. Talked about like he treats game development as a research project or something. I don't remember how he phrased it, but basically like you make it a bit and you test it and then you adjust, and then the whole process of like just make it, test. He phrased it as like it's a search algorithm.
It sounds a bit like he describes a design cycle. So to approach it in an iterative way, right? So that you first make something and then you iterate on it. So that should be the design cycle.
Yeah. But just in general, my point is like it would be way more kind of organized way of like that's how I would approach developing other games. So yeah, as a kind of algorithm that you run in general and have it way less kind of personal of like this is the game I want to make. This is the best game I'm thinking of. Like people are gonna love it. So yeah.
So do you think that you will focus a lot more now on your target audience when making a game?
Yeah, I guess so. That would be one way to put it, yeah.
And less about like, I want to make a jelly game and I want to Metroidvania and... So I think personally that you just take a risk by making a Metroidvania because a lot of people are making a Metroidvania. But to be honest, like one of my attentive watchers find it very interesting that you use the music in a different way. So can you tell something about the audio of your game?
So I do a bit of music myself as a hobby, and initially I thought I'll do that, but then I was like, I don't have the time or energy to do also that. I tried looking for audio people, some just came up and I did like hey, can you make a song with this kind of like vibe for me? And it didn't work. I got recommended this musician who made music for Jello, Zhenya Kukaverov. He made it. He's like more instrumentalist, like not electronic guy. He has a bit of a psychedelic vibe. I was just like, oh, this could work. And then I asked him like, hey, can you make a song with this vibe? And he just did it, and then it sounded right. And I was like, oh, okay, this is a go. And it was like quite a pleasure to work with him.
So it was a conscious choice to not go for the arcade style music.
Yeah, 100%. Yes.
Did you already knew your audio designer?
Well, it's like a friend of a friend, just like a friend of mine. Like I show my game to everyone and show my game to her. And she was like, oh,
play my game.
Yeah. And she was like, oh, you should talk to my friend Jenny. He makes music. Like he can make cool music for your game, and that turned out to be true.
So that's very interesting. So you most likely ask a lot of people to play the game. Like, what kind of players did you get based on this strategy?
Pretty much everyone who knows me knows my game. Especially when I was making it, it was also like almost like my whole personality. Like I'm the guy who makes the game. I always enjoy just seeing people play my game. It's not for everyone, so not everyone obviously liked to play it or kept playing it for a while. But it's just something like I meet people and they ask me like, what do you do? I'm like, oh, this is what I do. But yeah, it's also not the best audience to use for feedback, I feel, because your friends tend to like you. And also, of course, they're not all like gamers and stuff like that. In that way, it was way nicer for me to go to showcases and stuff like that and just have a lot of people come through, play the game, and then get feedback that way.
So you went to a lot of events and we met in the Netherlands. Did you also visited other countries with your game?
No, they were all like Netherlands based. So there was Indigo, there was some smaller ones that got organized in Breda, the one where we met, game tastings. At that showcase I went because I went to a previous showcase of theirs. And I don't even remember how I ended up there. I think I just kind of met Bram at some point, and then it's like, yeah, you want to showcase your game. But yeah, no, that's a great thing to do that I would recommend to everyone who makes games.
So you let a lot of different people play your game, so most likely you got a lot of different feedback, right? Or was it all kind of similar in their feedback?
Yeah, that like a lot of people that I know, they just don't play games at all. They just kind of don't give basically any feedback. They just say like, "Oh, that's cool.
Looks nice. Just keep going." Yeah, okay. So basically, people who never would play your game, basically, if you wouldn't make it.
Yeah. But also what I like with showcase events and or playtesting events where a lot of people play your game, a lot of the times it's more valuable not to hear what people tell you, what they would like improve or change about the game, but you just look how they play, right? And then you just see that like, oh, every third person gets stuck on this certain level. You just see issues that people encounter a lot. There's a lot you can infer just by watching a lot of different people play your game. And when you have a lot of people just go through it and like play it a bunch.
Like what kind of saw feedback that you gather and did you change on your game?
Well, that was already after the game was released, so I got a few feedback points. I think there was a few bugs that I got that I fixed. At that point, I didn't iterate on my game a lot, so there's one big change I made since the release of the game, which relates to progression. So that's also kind of a difference on these like playtesting events and in general when you give people to play your game. When you're testing out kind of a core concept, it's very nice and you can iron out a lot of issues. But at some point my game grew and then you need like at least like 5 hours if you're really good to play through the whole game. And at that point, it's very hard to playtest your game because you need to playtest it whole. So basically, my progression system was very straightforward, as in the game has a few worlds. Each world introduces a new mechanic, but to play the next world, you need to finish the previous world. And in each world, the levels go kind of harder and harder. A lot of people just give up before finishing the world and then there's nothing they could switch to and they don't even try like the second half of the game. So I just changed that progression so that after like the initial set of basically like tutorial levels, you can start every world and try it out and then you can play it a bit, and if it's too hard you can switch to the other one and then come back whatever you want. So that's kind of the one major change that I did. And that's like after the release, after seeing some people like stream my game and play my game, okay, this is a go. Work with him, basically, yeah.
Okay, so if we go totally back to the beginning, you said like at Breda University they asked you to make a game about jelly, and you came with Jello. But there was a particular thing like you were inspired by particular games, or like was it more like you look at your fridge and you saw your jelly and you were like, yes, I want this jelly to jump?
Yeah, so like the core control concept came from Angry Birds mixed with Oli Oli, right? So that's the whole idea of like push then release, and then I kind of like mixed those in my head and came up with the controls. The art I've narrowed in while I was doing it as my graduation project. By nature of it, the jelly is kind of made out of cubes. So I was like, okay, I just kind of have to do pixel art. And then I did a bunch of research on pixel art games. My main inspiration for that style is Celeste. Yeah, not entirely. So I worked with a few concept artists that did some things, and I was like, okay, it's Celeste, but we do this and this slightly differently. Of course, I get inspired by every game I play slightly here and there, but I think those three are kind of my main inspiration for the game.
I felt like with the dying counter, it feels a little bit like Super Meat Boy.
Oh yes, Super Meat Boy, of course, yes. Also a lot in terms of just levels, how fast you die, how fast you start again. Yeah, 100%. I got that one.
Yeah, that was the one when I was playing. I was like, oh, this is okay.
They were all...
But instead, you don't see the dying figure. It made me think about Super Meat Boy. Just to go back, was your environment supportive while making this game?
No, I feel like in general, everyone was like as supportive as they could be. I didn't have enough savings myself to like go through this whole process, so my parents were very gracious. Also, when I started talking to publishers and I was like, "Ah, this could be serious," they were like, "Oh, you need some help? You want some help to try this out?" So yeah, in a way, everyone was very, very supportive. Yeah, just kind of when I started thinking of it a bit less like a hobby project and like, hey, I could turn it potentially into my jobs. Like, basically, my dad also has his own company. So he was like, okay, I can help you basically try to start your own. And he did. Well, didn't work out as well as we both hoped, but or playtesting
so
events.
you had like something going on with your father? Did he help you? Like, what is his business like?
Oh no, his business is like way different. So it's like not really applicable. Like no, he just basically gave me some startup money so that I could spend like a year to try to make the game and then start a business on my own.
So he didn't give you tips like, oh, you should this or that?
No. It's like way different kind of lines of work, I think, for that to work. I mean, of course he gave me some advice in terms of things, but not a lot of his advice could be applicable to game dev. I think like game dev is way more like a kind of art than like a numbers game, but at the same time it is, but it's kind of way more complicated kind of thing.
So, if someone now at this time want to start as an indie developer, what would be your advice?
Don't do it.
Okay.
No, I mean, the thing is, I would say keep your ambition very small, an initial project very small, find a really good team and people that you can rely on and kind of spread, all the things you need to do. When you make your first projects, don't rely on finding a publisher. It's kind of ironic, but if you do your own marketing and you're already successful a bit, then the publisher will. So yeah, just initially rely 100% on yourself, things you can do yourself, including the marketing, and yeah, approach making games way more like a business and like an algorithm rather than what's the best game I can make kind of thing. So yeah, those would be my advice.
Okay. Interesting. I hope that you didn't like let everyone down, but it's also good to have the other picture on people's mind, because it is a very difficult industry, especially as an indie developer. And then, of course, the question that is nowadays, like, do you think AI will change a lot in this industry?
In a way, it is already changing things. Like I use AI when I'm doing programming, right? Some tasks that are too boring or that need a lot of typing. I think artists are likely to have a way harder time than designers and programmers. But maybe that's also just the way it is now, because for programming as well, I can imagine a lot of this kind of getting automated. And it's not that you don't need programmers at all, but you might need less of them, and also less of artists that just kind of oversee more of it. It's definitely scary, and in the long-term future, I mean, I think it'll take all of our jobs. But I don't know how long-term it is.
Okay, you see it very bleak, basically, if you say
Yeah.
all of the jobs. Okay.
It's also a big help, of course. It kind of depends how it goes, because there's like lawsuits now with AI companies and them using all kinds of data that they scrape. So it's of course depends on how that goes. So maybe they won't get too good and they can't just steal everyone's data.
Oh, okay, yeah. We will see what's going to happen, but
Yeah.
So you say on Steam, was it like at the start you had like a bump?
A tiny bump, but I also think I miscalculated the price of my game, which is also why I'm like incredibly sad I don't have like another like business person who can make that decision more like, less just like I think it cost this much. But yeah, like I had like a certain amount of wish lists, but it was less than 10% of those that ever got the game. So that was also like, oh, that's like, I thought it was going to be at least like, I don't know, 10-20% of people who wish listed. But yeah, no, it is bleak. It's very bleak. I had like a tiny bump and then basically no sales.
Okay. May
No,
I ask how many people had it on your wish list?
the release, it was like 700. And interestingly enough, it still has been going like slightly up.
Then they most likely wait till the Steam sale and then...
Yeah, and like a few people buy it every time like I put it on Steam sale. But yeah, it's not an income, basically. Well, you know, everyone was...
So you will say like, I would most likely change the price. Would you change it to a lower price?
For sure, yeah, lower price so that just more people can buy it. Because again, like I look at my wishlist percentage and like even Steam tells me like, oh, your wishlist conversion rate is like lower than average. So that it's like, oh, people want the game, but they're just not ready to kind of pay the price that I set out.
How many gameplay hours are in this game? Like if you play it from A to Z.
I of course can like speedrun the game in an hour, but it's like a very skill-based kind of game where you also have to take a lot of time to learn kind of the controls, so it can vary a lot. But I would say it's like between 5 to 10. Also, like I have a level editor, so you can make your own levels, you can play other people's levels. So in theory, at least the idea was that it could be like how you play it as much as you want to play it. But of course, that's not really how it worked out.
Well, you never know, maybe with this...
Yeah, maybe one day. Maybe one day.
With the Switch? Okay.
Yeah.
So keep on faith.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a very interesting, so thank you very much. So this was acreates. Enjoy more, create more, maybe learn more. See you in the next one.